Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, and it also gets uploaded on my YouTube channel as a video under the YouTube channel of Zenitsu. Today, I'm with my co-host Teddy, and we're going to be talking about our thoughts on the secondary market and how EX4 has been performing, on top of the changes to the Ultimate Cup format with a new ban and restriction update. So, I guess to start things off, obviously with the EX4 secondary market, EX4 is definitely in a really weird spot, I would say. So EX4, literally the format is like, what, 3 weeks long, technically, if you even want to call it a format?
Yeah, I mean, sure, if you want to call it a format. I apologize if you hear fireworks, by the way. But, 4th of July fun. But, I mean, it's hard for me to even say that this is a format. Nothing changes more often than not. We get maybe one, or you get one literal archetype that even functions better than it used to, and then everything else is just not great from the set. So it's like, I don't know if I really want to call it that, but...
Yeah, but the weird thing is how expensive the set kind of was or is. The secondary market usually settles within the first week or two, and, well, it's within the first week or two, and it really hasn't settled. If anything, certain cards actually went upward. I think that was more because of a buyout, and then we just didn't let the cards cool down to where they needed to be, so everyone saw the buyout and started panicking, it seems like. And because of that, the cards never actually cooled off after the initial, wave of their appropriate prices sold out, and now it's struggling to go down, and my thought process is that it's struggling to go down because nobody's buying into the set. Because where it is in the meta, it just actually doesn't even matter.
It's why would I, we were speaking about it a little bit earlier, but it's why would we purchase anything from the set when we're not going to get anything of value? At most we just get, unless you're a collector, fine. Collectors, there's some pretty nice cards visual-wise, they're gorgeous cards.
And if you like the set, that's also fine.
Yeah, there's no harm in buying the product, but you just have to be cognizant that this is not going to be a very good set value-wise. So whatever you buy, just know you are going at a net loss for the most part.
Well, I think value-wise right now, it's pretty okay, but that's just because literally nobody's opening up the product because it is sandwiched right after or right before BT13, which is going to have a huge meta impact and meta shift, and this currently literally has almost zero impact in the meta at all. It's almost laughable.
Yeah, it's borderline hilarious how bad the stuff is. So I'm interested to see how it changes. We've seen already that it's gone down a little bit. Actually, quite a fair margin with a lot of the cards. And then the altars are coming back up a little bit, but not enough for it to be anything of substance, essentially. So yeah, it should be interesting to see as we go forward. But I hope that a lot of these cards, at least the alternate arts and things like that, kind of retain some value. I don't see it, but besides the big ones.
Even the big ones are kind of losing its value. So you have the Silver Omnimon Alter S and the Silver Omnimon Zwart Defeat. I think the Zwart Defeat comes as a box topper and the Alter S comes inside of the booster. And even those, just the rarity on them, we've seen them do it in the past, and they're usually roughly around $100, $200, and they're both sub 100 right now, which is not a good sign. It shows that, even on the highest of the high ends, there's just not a lot of interest in these cards. And even Shine Greymon Ruin Mode, the alt art is the most expensive card you could pull on average in the set, and even that's still hovering at about $50. It's slowly going down, but it's probably going to stay at around that $50 mark just because of the actual card being a really good and usable card, not only just for Shine Greymon, but any purple or yellow deck that can actually utilize it. I think it's still a very powerful card. But the Omnimon Alter B secret, the alt art is not super high, and it's really close in value to the base art. The alt art right now is currently like $23, $25, which is like, it's okay. It's not insane. But for a secret that you usually want more than one copy of, at least 2 copies for the deck, and it can still be played in a couple of other decks because other decks can digivolve into it being a black level 7, especially for Ultimate Cup format, you actually get a good level 7 that's not Ragnar Lordmon that you could think about utilizing. Like, it's not a bad card. It's just the level of attention that's on the set is just almost non-existent.
Yeah, I think the player base as a whole has kind of just been like, yeah, we really don't need anything from this set besides, maybe the cards we want to, or at least they've adopted the whole singles aspect where there's no real reason to open product, just buy the singles and then go out from there, which is I think what most people's, at least from in my head, that's or what it seems like. That's what most people are just doing, just because there's no real reason, I mean, that I can see to really buy anything from this set. So I'm very interested to see what maybe some other opinions about it. I would like to see some more feedback on it because maybe it's just my view on it. Me as a more often than not competitive player, and I want good cards, and there's really not much of substance in this set. I mean, there's some fun stuff. I do love all the Gallantmon stuff and all that other stuff, but that's fun at best. I mean, I do like the whole milling and all that other stuff, but it's really not that great. But I'm gonna have fun with it, so hence why I even got product at all. I haven't bought any product. I got cards from your gracious trade, and then some other stuff that I got in the mail coming. So it's like,
I mean, I opened up 4 booster boxes of the set. I was just shy on a playset of any of the super rares, so I need to go out and still buy a couple of singles just to finish the playset of the super rares. What I wanted to do was I was hoping that the set was cheap enough, and then I would just buy extra super rares like I normally would do to be able to just have a playset sitting in a binder for a collection purpose, and then have a playset to actually, play with. And this set is dissuading me from doing that. I don't want to buy any more booster boxes because this set is actually becoming really, really volatile in terms of like the hits and the misses. And like, because you're getting to the point where there's going to be more misses than there's going to be actual hits. Because as far as like value wise, you have Shine Greymon Rune Mode about like $40 for the base, $50 for the alts. You have Omnimon Alter B, $17 right now for the base and $24 for the alts. Then as far as like the hot alt arts, you have Omnimon Alter S, which is about 21, and the base is currently at around 7. It's been slowly creeping up, but that's because I think people are done opening product again. So when people buy up the cards and there's no new supply coming into the secondary market, that's usually what causes the price spikes. And yeah, so I'm not even going to go over the alt arts. Like the alt arts and secrets is 90% of where the value is, but you get like really quickly after Kazuhamon, Kreskurumon, and Blitz Greymon, and then Ravemon. Everything else in terms of the alt art, so you have like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have like 5 alt arts that, if not more. Let me flip to the second page, see how many alt arts are on this page. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you have like 9 alt arts that are sub $10, which is not very good. And then, again, the only SRs that actually are holding any value is Blitz Crest, Omni S, Omni Alter S, and Kazuha. And then everything else is, like, $1 or $2. It's not looking good. Ravemon is also kind of up there, but I think Ravemon, people know that that's the 4 of Ravemon, and the new Ravemon is only the 2 of. So there's a little bit of that going into it, but the Ravemon deck it's not a competitive deck. People can pretend like it is. When it comes to the Premier Purple deck, it's going to be Belphramon and Beelzemon still. Like, Ravemon just isn't impactful enough.
No, it really just isn't. And people need to not act like it's going to be, because they're going to go into stuff. You might catch some people off guard. Maybe they don't know what the cards do. But more often than not, you're just going to get railroaded, because it's like hand looping sounds good in theory, but like when you're not the one choosing what cards are getting tossed, it makes no difference, because then maybe you catch them every now and then where it's like, oh, I really need all these cards. But more often than not, because we draw so much in this game, we just trash something we don't need, or it's just like, well, this is an extra, so I don't need this. Just throw it away and then continue on your plays. And it's like, okay, I lost a card that I didn't necessarily need. Okay, that's fine.
And I think like this set, in like more particularly, might like show or open people's eyes to EX sets as a whole and what they are and how bad of value they actually are almost every single time. The only EX set that has ever even been remotely worthwhile so far has been EX2. And EX2 started like this big trend shift of having a deck that you could build exclusively inside of the set, and then it upgrades and updates a whole lot of stuff or starts new stuff that's getting support in the future sets, which I'm totally down and on board with and I like. But the problem is the amount of cards inside of EX set for the price that they're selling is not worth it. Like, yes, card for card, the amount of total physical pieces of shiny rectangles that you are buying is the same as a normal booster box, but because of how the pull rates are, it really should not be sold as a normal booster box. If anything, it should be cheaper in my opinion. I come from a game called Force of Will. I have played it, and anyone who remembers that game remembers it very fondly up until the point where it started dying hardcore. But part of one of the reasons why it started dying hardcore was because of a little set that they had called Millennium of Ages, which was advertised and sold as a full booster, except like EX sets, it had half the amount of cards you can pull, so it made pulling everything in the set super easy. Everyone overbought it, so there was too much of it. Even still now, you could buy a booster box of that for like $20 if you're ever curious. It literally was that bad, and it damaged the game irreparably. And EX sets are a little bit better than that, but I still see EX sets as that, where the amount of cards to the pull rates to the playability of the cards, it's not all there. Like, EX sets have never had huge meta impacts. They're side sets, supplemental sets, whatever you want to call them. And I feel like that's going to have a huge impact on how we're perceiving EX sets, especially since they're on a completely different release cycle than normal sets. So we get these awkward moments where it's just like, here's an EX set format that's way too long, and then here's an EX format that's way too short.
Yeah, I think that'll be probably like the biggest downfall of these sets, is that we're getting them like in between the main set. So it's like they want to push cards, of course, that are, new in those sets, but like more often than not, the cards that come out in those EX sets are nowhere near the power level of the cards of the main sets, because those are the main sets that they want to sell. So it's like, why it makes it hard as a consumer to be like, yeah, let me buy into this set. It's like, why would you, when I could just go back and buy BT11 and make decks right out to it, and make very strong decks out the gate.
And
or
even
BT12.
Even going further back, like BT10, start building Cross. Cross is dirt cheap right now.
Like Cross, Grandis, there's all these other decks that are just infinitely better. I mean, than all four. Like there's all four. There's a whole bunch of decks. I can name a bunch of them that are just infinitely better than every single thing that came out in this set, except maybe the blue flare stuff. That's the only stuff that you can even put in contention.
Like, I'm not gonna say the set is all doom and gloom. There is some highlights.
No. It's fun.
Yeah, there's some highlights to the set. Like, I like the theme of it, and I think there's still like good individual cards, because like gold Vidramon can be used in both Armor Rush and in All Force. So like you get some really good like cards to help flesh out decks a little bit better. And what's another card? You get a new Gaiomon that can spawn his own Greymon variant based around Gaiomon.
OTK deck, basically, with it. It's so cool. Like, there's cool stuff. I'm not saying that the set is just the worst ever created.
Right.
It's just if you look at overall card value, you can just go to almost every other set and just be like, yeah, this is infinitely better. Like, more often than not.
I think like the big black eye on the set is literally Grey Knightsmon. Like, he is a premier SR that is absolutely but garbage.
Like 20 cents. It's like less than 10 cents. It's so cheap. Nobody wants it, man.
I mean, like, this is part of like design problems where Zeidgarurumon and Victory Greymon, I love them to pieces in terms of like who they are as Digimon and the lore around them, and then I think their art is absolutely beautiful. Digimon's art, it's really hard to find a really bad looking card, but it just goes to show like those two cards specifically are like good generic cards. But the problem is Digimon's at a level where good generic cards just don't get played at all. Like, why would I consider playing Victory Greymon in the way he's designed when I could just literally play any other level 6 Greymon that's actually being played? Like, even going all the way back to BT1 War Greymon, I think that card is still better than this Victory Greymon. Like, I get the 100%. Point. I get the point is to have, like, bad SRs to make them cheap, accessible, and like they're just good generic filler tech. So I've seen Japanese lists as an example with the Gaugamon stuff use Zeidgarurumon as the extra top end right now until we get the other Mirage, just because it's a good generic filler card that's fitting on brand, or not on brand, on theme with the idea of bounce control. And it's not a bad card for that, but it immediately gets outclassed by the rare in the next set.
Yeah, it's like, what is the point? It's almost one of those things where it's like, what is the point in like printing the card, period, or even in the creation of it, when you see like they make things that are just infinitely worse. Like, I'm talking just like dramatically worse. Like, we can just look at like oh my god, like some of the Grand Kuwagamon. Like, why would I ever play like that one? I think for the Dash Pack, it gets like 4K DP or something when digivolving.
Oh, the starter deck one.
Missed that. Oh, that's the one that has security tech +1. That one actually isn't the worst. Like, I could see merit in it. But like, there's the one like way back in the day, or was it the one that has piercing? Yeah, I think he has piercing or something. I can't remember. It was like way back. It was like from the Dash Pack. Had like an alt art. It was an old card, very old card. But like, why would I use that when like Grandis exists? Like, or like the promo Kuwagamon or anything of that nature. Like, there's so many better like options, and they print cards like that. Of course, that one's a little bit different because that one's way back in the day, and that's like the genesis of the card game. So they didn't really have great design philosophy just yet. They were just establishing it. But I think that philosophy still runs true when you're going into some of these other things where it's like they print the card last set that's like godlike, like, or let's, for example, Agumon X Antibody. As I'm looking at the card right now, this card is super good. It's just a free evo on any Agumon, searches 3 cards, adds potentially 2, or at least guaranteed 1 in your more often than not in your Agumon deck or Greymon dot deck, and it can be used in every single Greymon deck. So it's like, why would I ever use another searcher besides, you know, their inline searchers? Why? There's no point. Maybe unless they make one that has the same exact effect, but it has an inheritable, then that's just straight up power creep. But things like that, like, why would I ever use any other Agumon going forward unless they do the exact same thing or do something but better than that?
I don't like power-wise of the individual cards. I don't necessarily see that big of a problem. It's just in the big picture, the meta perspective. It's just these cards mostly just are not there. People could pretend like the Omnimon Alter S, Alter B deck is like a really good deck, but at the end of the day, it still suffers a lot of the consistency issues that Virus Imperialmon had before it. And like, just as an example, my brother was playing his Black War Greymon deck against that Alter S, Alter B deck, and my brother's not that great of a player. I'll get into that story hopefully later, but he's not that great of a player, and he was absolutely creaming somebody who had a way better understanding of the game and that deck more specifically than he did, and he was just creaming it. He didn't even know what he was doing half the time, and he was just beating out the opponent's player just by playing his cards. Like, it really goes to show that what they created, while it's fun, it's interesting, it's exciting, it's different, but it's just not good. Like, the idea for us as competitive players is to want to look at something and say, I want to purchase that because I know that's going to be a worthwhile purchase. I look at EX4 and I saw its release schedule, the cards inside of it, and what set is following it, and I said hard no. I am not wasting my money on a case of this set, and this is the first set I have not bought a case of because it is just not worth it. I think like the lack of people buying into it makes it a little bit more desirable from like a collector standpoint and a value standpoint, but we'll probably see come BT13's release in like 2-3 weeks, everything is going to start tanking. Just because nobody's playing the cards, nobody wants the set, nobody's buying the set, like, and what's out there, if it's lucky, it might maintain its price just because a lot of the stores they'll post up the price and then forget the card exists until it sells. But we're going to start seeing these cards creep down, and they are starting to creep down slowly. It's just that first initial hype wave and the buyouts really harmed the secondary market revolving around the set in terms of like making the cards cheap, accessible, and where they should be.
I think a lot of that also was, not only just, it's the new shiny thing, but like YouTubers like shelling out saying that these decks are that good or they actually can contend. Or now, not all of them were saying, oh, these are tier 1 and all that, but there are some YouTubers that I saw as I was watching, because I just consume a lot of Digimon media, or Digimon TCG media, and there's quite a few that were just like, yeah, like this Omnimon deck is actually not bad. It's like, I don't know if we're looking at the same cards, my friend.
I mean, when you pull off the combo, like, yeah, the deck is actually that good, but the problem is pulling off that combo.
Yeah. That with the Imperial deck, that deck borderline kills you in 2 turns if you get the full combo. But
okay, the problem is, in that style of deck, because of how many cards you were running, it was actually harder to fill up your trash than it was to draw cards in your hand. So this basically just flipped that script and said, okay, that was bad. Let's try if you actually have the cards in your hand. The only problem is, now a lot of the cards aren't drawing you like an excessive amount of cards to be able to find all the parts and pieces. So you're going to have to like dirtle around a little bit in your early game just to try to make sure you could try to find everything.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I don't think it's awful. Like, I don't think it's impossible to play. I think good players will still do good with it.
I mean, it's better than Alliance.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a whole other thing. It's like that deck isn't the worst. I'm not arguing that the deck is awful or anything of that nature. My complaints with it are, that's like the headline deck of the whole thing, and that is like mid at best, like mid, terribly mid, and that's like your deck or like your cover card is this Alter S, and the Alter S standalone is actually not bad. It's quite a good card, like just on its own, but the supporting pieces that go up to it are just not that great.
I think this is like a testing ground to see if they could do a DNA Omnimon before we actually get the good DNA Omnimon.
Grace Novamon, Grace Novamon, Grace
And-
Novamon. Please, I'm begging. Please.
Yes, like this screams like this is just testing grounds for the framework to be able to get something like this to work. And I think with each step and each iteration, they're getting closer. So I can't fault them for wanting to try to do it again. It's just the execution isn't necessarily the best. I love everything that the deck is doing, and the insane amount of like crazy potential that the deck has, especially even using pieces you're not supposed to be using. So like I've seen, because all of the cards are expensive right now, because you're gonna have to shell out, at least as of the recording of this, like what around let's just round up graciously each of the 3 SRs to $10. That's like 100. Like you're going to be shelling out over $200 for a casual deck when you could invest $100 in a competitive deck.
I was about to say, I'll tell you right now, because I have them all in my cart, because I was looking at getting them.
Oh, go ahead.
Currently, with all of them, and these are the lowest possible value that I could get them at. This is 4 of every SR. These are just the SRs, by the way, not the rest of the deck.
Yeah, the commons and uncommons are like worthless. So
just the SRs. It is currently 98, a little under 97.60 something.
Is that including the secret as well?
Yeah. No, that is not the secret. That's
okay. So add in another. Add in another 37. 20... Or not 37, 34. My bad. I can't math.
Alter
B.
Alter B is currently... I mean, the regular one is only 17, yeah. So, yeah. You only need 2 of it. So, yeah, about 30... This $18, $36, $37, because, you know...
shipping, fees, tax, whatnot.
So, 120, almost $130, basically. For just the SRs, and this is, like, borderline not even great. So, it's like... when you could just buy right now hunters for like $70 and you build the whole deck.
Yeah, for
like
probably
half less than that, to be honest.
Yeah, for half. I'm 90% sure it's less, because the superior Arrestor Superior is like the only real expensive card outside of like the 2 Quartzmon. So like 2 Quartzmon for $10, and we'll just without even looking, just say $10 for the super. So you have like $50. Oh, he's 5. Okay, so scratch that. You could probably build the deck for no, like that just goes to show that the value between the power of the cards and how much you're paying is not equal.
Quartz is only 5 too, so this is like a $40 deck, $50 tops
for a tier 1 deck. Yes,
borderline the best deck in the format. So it's like, why would I spend almost $200 or almost $200, $150, $140 with all the shipping? I didn't include the shipping for the little guys too. So it's like borderline $150 when I could spend not even a third of it and get a borderline the best deck in the format.
And like, I get that EX sets are supposed to be these supplemental sets, but like, it's getting to the point where they're just not even that great. Like Examon from EX3, that was pretty good. Cool, Chaos was pretty good. So like, they've done good like supporting cards, and I think like in this set, the best generic card that we have is Kazuhamon. Like, that card is just generically good and playable in any yellow or purple deck, period. And I love that card just because of that. But like, the set isn't going to be hard carried by that, and the set right now is not getting hard carried by the deck, because we only have like one EX4 event in North America, and then I think we have like 1 or 2 in Oceania or Latin America or just the other territories, and then the set is over and we're on to BT13. I think like positioning wise, it's just really bad. And I've said this multiple times before. I really wish they would just fix their scheduling. Instead of having these 2 separate release schedules, just have one set release schedule. Every 2 months, release something. End of discussion. It's not rocket science, because you're going to create a lot of player ill will and contention when we get to situations like this where nothing in the set is basically playable outside of a small handful of cards, like even smaller than normal, and you're asking people to spend a lot of money when the next set that is known to be more powerful is literally just around the corner. And that's partially why I think a lot of people just said, no, I am not buying into the set, which is what helped cause the current state of the secondary market, on top of the buyouts and the rushes in like the first day or two of the set's release. But that's like kind of normal for the most part. I think like BT13 is going to be opened to high heavens, which is good because the secondary market isn't going to be super strong, but that's good because then a lot of people are going to be buying up all of the parts and pieces, and that's what creates like the flow of letting the secondary market do its thing and breathe, rather than just let me never touch it, and then the product is going to get choked to the point where nobody wants to buy it, even when the cards are high. So, like, even if the box EV is worth it, nobody's still going to want to buy it because it's just not a desired product.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I couldn't have said it better, honestly.
So, I think that kind of wraps up that, and we do have some small news pieces. The biggest one being an update to the Ultimate Cup ruling in the Ultimate Cup format for Ultimate Cup. I have to say that 3 separate times, just to make sure you know that it's Ultimate Cup and not main game. Although I really hope some of these kind of transition into the main game, because I think some of these restrictions are kind of needed and long overdue. So if you want to go over those restrictions, Teddy?
Of course. Of course, this is the same. The single color deck building still going to be the same for these Ultimate Cups. The only thing, so they unrestricted the Weregurumon X, which is, I understand the other card is banned, the promo, or it's not banned, it's limited.
It's limited, so there's no reason for Were X to be limited anymore.
So that makes sense. Perfectly fine. Doesn't bother me at all. Now comes the bigger ones. Now, these cards are restricted to 1 copy apiece per deck. Starting off with BT11 Analog Man, which is super big. Super, super big, and definitely, I think, needed for this kind of format. Just because Machine Dramon is just so absurdly oppressive in this format when there's not a lot of answers to it. We can go a little deeper as we finish through. BT12 Marcus Damon, so they're preemptively hitting Marcus before before the next set comes out, which is I understand, especially in a monocolor format where basically the deck is untouched, because they could just run red or yellow either way, doesn't really matter
because almost all their cards are 2-color.
Exactly, so it's like borderline untouched. So I understand completely. I think it sucks, but I understand. Marcus is a absolutely absurd card. I still don't think it absolutely kills the deck, just because 1 Marcus a lot of the times is enough. This just makes it so it's not just beyond absurd. Now a lot of hits, another hit to Beelzemon, Deathslinger being put to 1 on top of the EX2 Mmon. So that's they just really wanted to cripple Beelzemon in this format.
I mean, they tried last time, and as we've seen and talked about the data, it literally was not enough.
So understandable. Beelzemon was still very, very good, even with the EX2 Impmon hit. It didn't matter. They only needed it maybe 1 or 2 times a game. That just made it so it just couldn't absurdly high roll. But that wasn't the biggest issue. The memory manipulation probably was more of the issue.
Yeah, let me just extend my plays and play more cards and just gain more value. Like, please and thank you.
So it's like, blah. It's an understandable hit. Still have Hydramon on the list, which is good. Keep it that way. Now we go to completely banned cards. These you cannot include them in any of your decks. BT3 Hidden Potential was the only card added to this list, which is super big. Now they can't sack you out. None of these Bloom Lord players can no longer sack you out and just auto win. I hope this comes to the main game. But that's a side thing. Continuing the list, it still has Cerberusmon Werewolf mode. That's fine. They're trying to open it for other purple decks. Makes sense. So that Mervamon loop, Cerberus loop isn't just the only purple deck that runs rampant. DeathXmon, of course, is still banned completely. The whole point of this format is to make the lower powered decks come up. So DeathX invalidates like 70% of the decks in the game. So completely understand. So I think this was a very interesting list. Hit. There's a lot of things that I think I agree with just about everything. I don't think I have really anything negative to say about this list.
And again, this is only for Ultimate Cups.
Ultimate Cup.
For competitive, like the real version of the game, the one that we generally talk about the most, outside of just people's curiosity for Ultimate Cups, this does not apply.
Yes, that is correct, and that is very important to understand, because we don't know if this will stay this way when we go into regular format.
The rumor has it, and based on previous trends, Ultimate Cup is their testing grounds for rules changes for the main game. That has been half proven and half disproven. Mulligans were implemented from the first Ultimate Cup, and now they're a mainstead rule. They tested out some limitations, although some of them came out literally after the changes made, but like the bans and restrictions, some of them that were on the Ultimate Cup list did come to fruition into the main game. Not saying that there's precedent or anything, it's just that's the noticeable pattern.
Another thing to add is that you see, like, he has it on the screen at the moment. These are cards that were added. So anything previous to this point is still there. So right.
All of the current ban and restrictions are still in effect. These are just the changes that they feel like they need to make for the monocolor format, because they do know that it is supposedly a slower format. It is a format that's not as high power as the main game, just because the splashing of two colors can extend and enhance decks dramatically, and there's literally multicolor decks that can outperform any monocolor deck. So they are just trying to freshen up the way that we play. It's just I'm not a huge fan of the slowerness of this and the lack on actual deck variety, because it really wasn't hard to predict a lot of the top decks that have been topping in Ultimate Cup, and like these are just kind of no-brainer answers on trying to fix that. Like, there's still not a whole lot of ways that decks can interact with Machinedramon, and the only way that they could beat it is by going around it. Well, if they have multiple analog bans, they no longer can go around it, and there's like borderline almost no tamer hate and removal in monocolor format that people are using. So you just have this card that's just making your Digimon be able to wall out even a wide field of Digimon, so your deck actually has no weaknesses other than the speed of setup, and this card also helps you speed and set up your deck. So like it does too much for the deck, especially for the monocolor format. I want to see this implemented in the main game just because decks still have that problem. It's just there's a little bit more answers and a little bit more outs.
Exactly. So that hit is 100% understandable. I completely agree with it. Just because there was just so many decks that just could not play at all. Like literally, you just can't play when a Machinedramon with two analog mans gets set up.
I mean, I know that makes Red Hybrids borderline unplayable, and Red Hybrids is like the 5th best deck in Ultimate Cup, and it's like the 5th best deck in the main game too. Analog man's just too hard to play around for Machinedramon.
Exactly, and this will slow the deck down. It definitely. I don't know if I feel like it still will be solid. It's just
I think they just play a different tamer. Yeah,
and they just have to be more careful with what they use.
Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah, and then going on to the Deathslinger, obviously coming off of the heels of a nerf for Beelzemon. We kind of already touched on it, so just touching on it a little bit more lightly. The memory gain is what's making the deck absolutely absurd. The fact that it has enough mill power to be able to consistently gain extra resources out of nowhere for free because you're just doing what your deck wants to do, it just is too much for a lot of decks to handle. And I've said this on previous episodes of the podcast. I really hope that they do hit Deathlinger because it also doubles as a removal option.
It's too much value in one singular card. That's the best I can put it. Like, it just does too much. And they do that with other cards, so why would this be any different? Why would they not hit this card if there are other cards that follow the same pattern?
I mean, to be honest, I just think the idea of these mill triggers, while they're cool and fun and they make the deck exciting, especially since you could set it up, I personally hate them because it's just free added value that no other deck really has access to. Outside of the next card in the list that we're going to be talking about, which is Marcus.
Marcus is a whole nother beast.
Marcus and Shine Greymon supposedly is positioned in BT12 or BT13 competitive to be the best deck in the format because of how fast it can move, how hard it can hit, and how disruptive it can potentially be on top of its combo plays, just making things so much harder for the opponent for you literally doing nothing. And BT12 Marcus is like the center point on the entirety of the deck because a lot of the deck wants Marcus on the field. A lot of the deck wants your Tamer to be suspended. Marcus could suspend himself because he's attacking. A lot of the deck just searches and plays out Marcuses for free. Granted, there is a Marcus in BT13 for us to use. He's a 5 cost. He's a memory fixer, which this Marcus isn't. But this Marcus, the important thing is on top of the fact that he's basically a hybrid solo, because you just pay 1 as long as you have an Agumon or Greymon on the field. He just turns himself into a Digimon, which is cheaper than hybrids, mind you. Yes.
A 1-cost hybrid that forcibly can evolve your Digimon for free.
Yes, that's the part that makes things a little extra stupid, because we've seen this flaw and error in design where when they make things, I guess, too free, because there's like free and then there's like absurdly free, where it's just like the card might say it's free, like DNA. It might say it's free, but the actual cost is supposedly getting that secondary body out, which would cost you some resources in order to do. And then there's free, where it's just like, oh, I just had my other Digimon on the field, I moved it out of raising, I invested nothing into this, now I can pay 1 to basically swing with Marcus and Digivolve my Digimon. So it's like, if you're putting the cost to the abilities, yes, you're technically paying 1 to Digivolve into a level 6 or a level 7 or even a level 4 or 5 if you need it to. Like, it's just too flexible, it's too free, it's too cheap for what it's doing, and it's just too powerful.
And then if the arguments that some people will say, well, it's a 4-cost Tamer, you don't ever play it by paying the cost.
Most of the time
it pays it back way further down. It pays way more than the 4 memory that it costs to play.
I mean, just Digivolving. Yeah, just Digivolving into your Mega basically almost pays for itself.
So it's like that, and then on top of that's not only that, it's also doing damage because you're attacking with him. You're getting draw power with the Evo and the Inheritables, removal with your Inheritables, and potentially if you're using the other Marcus and tandem to play things. There's a whole bunch of like ridiculous combos that like you can do that your opponent can't deal with. And since it's DP based removal, there's not very many ways to protect against it. Most decks, I say about 95% of decks cannot deal with DP based deletion.
If you're literally not black playing Breath of the Gods, or just have that ability, yeah, you're dying to DP reduction.
So it's like there's no way to stop him from removing your bodies on the board, and the deck will, because there's just so many little bits of DP all over the place, DP reduction. And then there's the bigger DP reduction from the level 6s, and then it's just too much for just swinging with a tamer, and you think, oh, it's only 3K, maybe 6 at best. Okay, well, Shine Greymon, the one from BT12, will straight up just reduce your security's DP. So makes him effectively not 6K. He'll be if you
like
have two of them
9K.
out.
Yeah, he'll be like 9 to 12K usually.
Effectively a 12K double hit that even if he dies, will just heal. He'll just go back to your security, which means now your opponent has to either find a way to trash it, or they have to swing into it, give you the free Marcus again, so that you could just do it again. And this is once per turn, so it's like it's too much. It's just I can go into an absurd amount of detail.
Yeah, especially for monocolor format where things are supposed to be dialed back. The fact that the deck is 2 colors, and this is kind of my problem with 2 colors, like, it basically invalidates the entire ruling on it needing to be monocolor, because, like, oh, you just have this unfair inherent advantage on being able to do whatever you, like, whatever you want, and there's no downside because almost all of your core cards are 2 colors. So it's like if you want to play, like, the hardest decision is, do you play red eggs or yellow eggs? And that's pretty much the hardest decision.
More often than not, you play red for consistency, and that's just that's
red for consistency, yellow for control.
So it's like there's no wrong answer basically, and that's whereas like a lot of other decks in this format need to make that distinction. Okay, if I'm using a dual color, what can I use? If I'm playing Gallantmon or Chaos Gallantmon, am I gonna lean towards red, or am I gonna lean towards the purple so I can have all the trash stuff? Or I'm going to lean towards red so I can have all the Gallantmon power and synergy in that base. So it's like you and one way or another you're losing out on something massive. Whereas Shine, there's no loss ever.
And I think, like, because of this limit, it is going to make the BT13 Ultimate Cup a little bit more interesting. I think that based on what we know from the rest of the set and, like, what we know from Japan in terms of, like, just some preliminary data, I think that like the Mirage deck is looking to be a very strong deck in that format. Very strong. Even though it doesn't have the training cards to up its consistency, I still think because of the speed of the rest of the decks, it's still going to outperform the vast majority of decks.
I think that Black War and the variations of Black War, Gaiamon, all that other stuff, and Greymon.deck, essentially. Greymon.deck will do good.
Belphamon's going to do really well. Yeah. I think that Alphamon, he did sneak in a win. I think that was because of Lychee, and Lychee is an absolute mad lab of a genius when it comes to his black decks, more specifically Alphamon. I think he probably will pioneer the deck into some success. I think Bloom still is going to be okay, even with all of the nerfs, just because the Rosemon stuff now can slot even easier into the deck, because, Hydramon's limited to 1. It didn't have any good other level 6s. Well, now here's Rosemon that also is a fairy, so it's still fitting on brand and on theme with the rest of the deck, especially with all of the new pieces wanting to interact with suspending themselves. And you even have another level 7 if you really wanted to run Rosemon Burst Mode. I don't think you will. I don't think that's better than Quartzmon, because Quartzmon literally could just auto-win you certain matchups. But still, the idea, the fact that Bloom, even with all of the constant nerfs, still is going to be a really good deck because it's getting a big update. I think maybe Magnamon can make a comeback and Armor Rush.
Ooh, like a blue yellow Armor Rush.
Yeah, I think like you're forced to kind of play either just blue or blue yellow, because you do have the 2 Magnamons, and then you do have just a slew of other really good armor Digimon that are also part blue. I really like the gold Veedramon in the deck, though. That's me personally, but I think that deck's gonna be solid. I don't think it's bad. Yeah, Jesmon might be able to make a comeback. I don't necessarily think he is. I don't think Jesmon is better than Red Hybrids.
You still need all the Sistermons, and the BT13 stuff relies solely on sister mons being played.
I definitely don't think the Kentaros barrier deck is gonna do a whole lot
Yo,
either. I
don't
think
sleep on
like
that deck, man.
I'm not
Don't
gonna
sleep.
sleep on it. Like a lot of people might sleep on Leopardmon as well, but I think
That
like
deck in monocolor, Leopard, is going to be good. Like I can see that deck doing very well in the monocolor format. Big blockers or multi blockers slash OTK style thing.
I think the big sleeper for monocolor format out of like new BT13 tech is gonna be Gallantmon. We finally get the good Gallantmon.
Yeah, we do. We do finally get the boy. Oh Lord, this might be my time to shine. Who knows? Who knows, man? But I don't know. I feel like I still feel like it's not enough. But I don't know. I would have to play with it, maybe see how it is in that format, this type of style. I'll have to practice and see. I just don't know if it's enough. But
That's fair. Like that's kind of where like Ultimate Cup is supposed to be interesting is we don't exactly know the full impact of the new set on the format, where in competitive we kind of do because we have a decent amount of data from Japan to look at, whereas monocolor format we have borderline no Japan data and we have to guess based off of competitive data, take a look at all of the monocolor competitive decks and basically just remove all of the multicolor ones out and say that's our baseline for what is going to be good. And even then, like, decks can still come up and surprise people.
yeah, I think this Ultimate Cup is going to be very interesting. I think there's going to be some interesting decks coming up just because of BT13 and the sheer amount of decks that are available to you. Um, and now with all these hits, a lot of them are still going to be hit, or a lot of them are going to be a little bit harder to play at a maximum potential. So
I mean, at least even with Marcus nerfed, you still have a way to turn your other Marcuses into a Digimon to swing because of the Agumon. So, like you said before, I don't think it's going to kill the deck. I think the idea was just to slow them down for the desired pace of what they want that format to be.
I think the deck will be just fine. They'll sit there, they'll search for their Marcus. Eventually, they'll find it, or if it's in security, one or the other. Uh, they'll find it, and once they find it, then it'll just do normal shine things. So I don't think it'll change too much. Even if they don't use that Marcus, the other Marcus still is good enough because it facilitates gaining that extra memory. It's also control at the same time while gaining memory. So it's like, I think the deck will be just fine. It definitely will be slower, and they'll have to be a little bit more methodical with when they do things, or a little bit more creative. But I don't think the deck is going to be just crippled to the point where you can't play it. I think it'll be probably one of the best decks in that format. Still, just because of the natural removal you get, like the amount of just widespread removal you can do while spawning bodies is just too much. Even for a lot of decks to deal with. Like, Bloom is going to have a hard time in that matchup, even with Marcus hit. Bloom is still going to suffer hard into that matchup.
It'll definitely be interesting. I'm excited to see people's creativity. I've even seen some creativity now, partially because of how expensive certain EX4 cards got. So like I saw this build online where somebody was using the whole 2 Digimon DNA all the way up on the same field to end off in Ragnarlordmon. And I saw that and I was just like, that's kind of cute. I appreciate the attempt on trying to A, make the deck cheaper, and B, have a different type of result. And like that's the type of creativity I do like seeing, especially with these custom rule sets. And I just hope in next year, the rule set is going to be something more geared towards me. I'll obviously still look at the meta for Ultimate Cups and still cover it, just because I know everyone is still kind of curious, and I do like collecting and analyzing all of that data that Eggman gets, because Eggman is the only one who can get that data, because Bandai is very selective on who they choose. But I digress, and it's going to be... BT13 is definitely going to be a really interesting time. But speaking of interesting times, I actually had a really interesting times at locals this past weekend. I was debating about covering the story. I don't know the player's name off the top of my head, and even if I did, I would obviously redact it. But there was a new group of people at my locals. They had BT13 stuff, and they were building their BT13, or not BT13, EX4 stuff, and building EX4 decks. And I was playing some of my EX4 decks, like Mill Gallant, Mill Chaos, because that was fun. And we were all just having a good time. It was definitely nice seeing new people. Until we got to one of the last games of the night, and it was my brother, one of my little brothers, versus the one of the new people on the Omnimon deck. As I already mentioned before, earlier in this episode, my little brother isn't necessarily the greatest Digimon player in the world. There's a lot of stuff he misses, a lot of stuff he doesn't know the interactions to, and a lot of stuff he just doesn't catch. But I'm not going to fault him for that, just because he does have some cognitive disabilities, and he's still just there trying to have a good time, and I'm trying to be supportive towards his decision and want to play the game. So I ended up helping him towards the final plays of the game that they were playing in the final set. And the brand new person who I had just realistically met and had better interactions with today, because I've seen them at other card shops before, I haven't really interacted with them a whole lot, but they were there and we were just all having a good time. And I helped my little brother out, and the opponent got extra salty. And by extra salty, I mean he points out to me that, hey, you know that's cheating, right? And I stare at him in complete, disbelief that he was even attempting to say this in a casual format, or not casual format, in a casual setting. Like, we didn't pay anything to play. There's no prizes on the line. It is just 100% pure casual, which is why I like testing a lot of my casual decks. But the fact that he's like, hey, you know that's cheating, right? I stare at him. And he has this, vulgar, just a complete disinterest look on his face. And he's just like, I don't play with cheaters. Then he immediately scoops up his cards. In a game he was losing anyway, even if my brother was obviously not playing optimally. So I tried to help him play a little bit more optimally. And he was going to lose anyway, and he just picks up his cards and he's just like, I don't play with cheaters, and walks away super angry. And I just stood there and sat in my chair, and I was just like, did that just really happen? Did somebody get so salty over A, losing, or B, me trying to help my brother out make a play? I couldn't even believe it. I'm not saying the player is a bit he's at fault here. He obviously felt he has his own, I don't know what was going on in his head to make him act that way. It just felt bad knowing that my brother was the casualty of a dispute I was having with another player over a casual game that meant absolutely nothing. And I felt bad on both players' parties, but at the same time I'm just I can't believe that just happened.
That's such an absurd story. Maybe the guy's having a bad day.
He gave me a free binder. He gave me the because he had a whole bunch of the Bandai Premium product that he just opened. So he literally at the beginning of the day gave me a binder and was like, "I'll go happy lucky." And then I helped my brother out with a play, and he screams at me. He didn't really scream, but he abruptly says I cheated, and then picks up his cards and walks away. And I'm just like, what? Where was the shift?
Oh, thank you very much for the raid, Cam Sal. Appreciate that. Super big ups. But that's such a weird. That's such a weird thing to harp on in a casual local setting.
Am I the wrong person? Should I have said something to try to calm the other guy down that I barely know? I'm just sitting here and I'm just all the scenarios in my head screamed, do not talk to them. do not confront them, do not say anything. It would only make things worse. But like I couldn't even.
That's such a. I mean, I guess to play devil's advocate, you could technically say you were, but like we're not playing in a tournament setting, so it's like, does it matter? Like, it's just to play the decks. Like, does it realistically matter that you said something? Not like you were straight up grabbing his cards and saying, "Do this, do this, do this." You're just saying, "Hey, maybe that's probably not the best idea. Maybe you should look at some other cards in your hand." I don't know the interaction, of course.
So to get into the nitty gritty of it, my brother was on Black War Greymon, and he had basically complete dominance over the board state. The opponent had a Blitz Greymon on the field, and he was going to try to set up his secondary Digimon. And because my brother on Black War just killed his secondary Digimon, that was another Blitz. So he didn't have the ability to DNA, so he was just sitting on 2 level 7s, and he was just trying to de-digivolve the Black War Greymon to, have some semblance of control. So my brother moves out of raising, or he doesn't move out of raising. He digivolves back into a Black War, kills one of the tamers, and then he was immediately going to digivolve right into a Black War X. So I said, hold up. He has 1 Digimon on the field. Your Black War can still restand because it didn't kill a Digimon. Why don't you swing into his Digimon, clear it for free, unsuspend, then digivolve? And my brother was just like, oh, I keep forgetting to do that, don't I? And I'm just like, yes, you do. And I'm like trying to help him out because there's so much going on trying to keep track of what abilities he has, what conditions it's under, and then doing all of the mental math between evolution and everything. I could tell he's trying his absolute hardest, and I just wanted to help it a play out. And his opponent was just not having any of that.
Like, I understand to a very borderline minute the other perspective, where you're playing and you're playing to win at the end of the day, but that winning should not be that important where you have to be rude to the other person. None of that should matter. At the end of the day, this is a game. This is a card game. It doesn't really matter what you do in that. You really should never have to be that way towards somebody.
And I felt more bad for my brother than for the person he was playing against, because my brother, he's very sensitive, and he was going, I knew the immediate thought that was going to run through his head was, did I do something wrong to piss him off? Because he obviously picked up his cards. It's like, I don't play with cheaters, as the person that he was playing against. And I'm just like,
so unfortunate.
I was just like, no, this is not happening. Because most of the time, the dudes at our locals, they're all super, the usual group is all super fine casual. We'll do takesies, backsies, because we know it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. If they saw the better play, yeah, of course, I'll let you do the better play, because that's how we learn and grow, is we play through our mistakes. My brother obviously didn't acknowledge his mistake, and I wanted to point it out to him and help him, and I guess that was too much for the opponent.
I mean, I guess you can really just take that stuff with a grain of salt, because it's not like...
And I'm not going to hate on the other...
It wasn't ill. It wasn't like you were like, no, I wanted my brother to absolutely destroy my opponent. No, it was...
He was destroying him just fine because he was on the Omnimon deck.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. You weren't doing it with the intention of ruining the other person's experience. It was just solely for the reason of getting your brother to get on that mentality of there's more things than just the single-minded thing. So I mean, I understand completely. I think the other person is probably in the wrong here, just because there's no, even if you're upset about something, you don't need to take it out on the person. You can just be upset and move on. You lost the game.
And the rest of his crew seemed pretty okay. My brother tried to, I have 2 brothers, they're twins. My other brother, he was trying to interact with them because, you know, he was being kind and cordial, and he's just like, hey, I wanted to play against a different opponent, well, against different decks that I haven't really played against before, because they were all playing EX4 stuff, and obviously I didn't buy my case of EX4 to play more than just Chaos Gallant, because Chaos Gallant can be built with mostly rares. I think the only super rare I was playing in the deck was Mega Dramon from EX2.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Can't wait to play.
But like it was just so unfortunate. So like to end the night, I basically, like, we were all winding down, getting ready to leave, and I basically just walked up to them and said, "I hope you have a happy 4th of July." And like that's the last interaction I had with the group to try to mend something, because I have no idea if they're going to be coming back, or if I put such a sour taste in that person's mouth that his brother and their friend don't want to come back. And I'm just like, that's not the environment I want to strive for. But if they don't come back, I'm not necessarily going to cry if they're going to be, you know, that upset all the time over us just trying to have fun and learn from our mistakes and learn how to be better players.
No, I don't think I would be too upset about that, to be 1,000% honest. I think I'd be just fine.
Although it was really funny. My one of my brothers walks up to me as we're leaving, and he's just like, "So are they bigger whales than you?" And I'm just like, I kind of like died laughing in my car. I'm just like, yeah, I stopped buying Bandai Premium stuff when I realized it's not worth the wait. I don't want, like, the new Beelzemon binder. I think that value-wise is really nice looking, really good value for the cards that you're getting, but I don't want to wait 8 months to get that. I want it now. And Bandai does this because they haven't made the product yet. They should, smart business wise, make some initial wave of the product, like a first print run, and then take the pre-orders and see how many extra they need to make, and that would cut down on how much like time we're spending doing nothing but waiting and having that money get tied up. I know, like, because of this, the value of the secondary market on the cards is insane, but it just, I stopped buying Bandai Premium products because I don't like the wait. I don't like tying up that money, and I could put it towards more important things that are coming out literally in the next few weeks. BT13. But anywho,
correct. I don't think I'll be buying any product anytime soon, unless, I mean, something randomly comes up that's worth me buying. But I'm gonna make a strong assumption that that's not the case. Oh,
I mean, if I want the binder, I'd probably buy it off somebody for like maybe $40, pay what I should be paying for that type of a thing. I could do without the promos if I'm lucky. Maybe somebody's going to sell it for $30 just because the value of the cards is just going to be that much higher. I don't necessarily exactly predict that, because right now I made like a Facebook post kind of calculating the current value of the cards as is. And like, if you're not going by alt art price, it's not that great, but if you are going by alt art price, then it is actually pretty good.
Fair enough. I mean, I guess I can see that.
Although people found really offensive that I posted $20 or more for the worth of the binder, because like I've seen online, art binders, like covered binders, even though they're 3-ring binders, for like $20. And I know like the designer ones that have like the built-in stuff, like everything is built in together, you don't need to buy sheets or whatever. I know that's usually around $40, but like the amount of people that like called me out on that was actually kind of astonishing.
I find that weird. I mean, so they just want to pay more?
I was just trying to help like decide that it was good value. Like, I think maybe they were just pissed that I didn't put 40 plus for a designer binder, but like I don't value the binders that insanely high. Like, I could get, like, if I'm spending $40 on a binder, it's going to be a 4-pocket binder that also zips. And I like having 4-pocket binders to show off full play sets of cards, not this 9-pocket stuff. I hate 9 pockets.
Yeah, it's just not. It's so weird. I mean, you also have to also take the Facebook group as with a grain of salt.
I know.
It is. There's just people there that just want to be negative. And it's just.
It comes with the territory. Like, there's good apples and bad apples, just like at
Correct.
locals this past weekend. There's good apples, and then sometimes there's bad apples and bad moments.
Just try not to be the bad apples, people. That's all that really matters. This
Because
is like,
Yeah, because all I do at locals is I just want to strive for a welcoming, open environment. Anyone can show up, anyone can play, anyone can have fun. I bring extra decks, so if somebody doesn't have a deck, they could just ask me to borrow one. I have a lot of different decks in the game built, and like seeing the person just be so salty, just really, it didn't like make me question, but it made me stop and it made me think like I don't understand how we got to this point.
I think it's the more that this game gets notoriety, traction, the more it'll bleed into other card games and those some other card games. I will not say what groups and things like that. I'm not gonna do that. But there are some card games that particularly I came from that their communities weren't that very welcoming, or they were on the surface level very welcoming, but then when you play, they're quite on the opposite end. They're quite toxic, and that's also that is completely could just be anecdotal and where I'm at. It's just maybe the area is just not very good for that specific game. Not going to say the game, but it's it also just comes in the environment of card games in general, where the players as a whole tend to be, I don't want to say not social, because that's not true. I know plenty of people, and myself included, that can just go to any group of people and talk to people about just about anything, not just card games. So I don't think that's the case. Of course, for a good chunk of people, but there is a good amount of people that maybe don't have the best social skills, and things of that nature, and that just comes with card games in general. It's just one of those unspoken things that I feel like people don't necessarily talk about, where we're so used to just communicating through the internet and things like that, and it's very easy to just be negative when you're playing these kind of games, and you have that mindset where it's like, oh, well, I should be winning because my deck is good.
Yeah,
X, Y, Z.
because there was that Facebook story where somebody was basically just playing Blue Flare, and then his opponent just immediately quit on him because he was playing Blue
Yep.
Flare. He's like, I'm not playing against this toxic deck, and I'm like, one, Blue Flares is not that toxic. It's good, it's not toxic. And two, like, I get it online. It's a little bit easier to walk away, but like still, just literally experiencing my own negative story and then reading that one shortly after, I'm just like, that's a little weird for a coincidence. I'm not saying it's the same person. I'm just saying, like, the fact that these stories are happening back to back was weird to me.
It's unfortunate, and I think sadly it just comes with the territory, just like the internet and things like that. I think there's a lot of TCG players that just don't have, I'll say subpar social skills, where they just don't, or don't understand that they can get angry, and it's fine if you're upset. Let's say when I'm practicing, I don't like losing. I'm a competitive player at heart. I don't like to lose, but you can't take that out on people, man. It's just,
Most of the time,
it's
I
not
take it
fair.
out on myself. I beat myself up.
Exactly.
Like that's
Exactly.
what I try to do to not be salty towards the other person. Is I beat myself up. I'm like, man, I'm so stupid. I should have made a completely different play that would have changed the outcome dramatically. Like that's just more of my coping mechanism. Is just take it out on myself. Like I'm the one who made the mistakes. I'm the one who misplayed. So the fault is mine. I can't get mad that my opponent outplayed me if I didn't play as best as I could. When I get extra mad is when I get confused, when I don't understand where my faults or misplays were, if there were any. That's a completely different story, but like still, I'll blame myself first and others second.
Yeah, I think I tend to follow in that same suit, where one, I don't really I try my hardest not to show that I'm frustrated to anybody, period, when I'm in these games, just because we're playing a game, and it kills the environment when you're like, you see that your opponent is upset. And you don't want them, like, I don't actively want to upset anyone when I'm playing these games. We're playing these games for fun. We're trying to enjoy our time. We spend money on it. It's just, this is supposed to be a pastime. So it's disheartening when you're sitting there and you're just playing. Maybe you start off good, you're having a decent conversation with the person, and then you start winning, or the opposite. Or no, it's usually when you're winning. You start winning, and then it's just like
they want to quit. Yeah,
they want to be mad, or they get angry because they're losing, and they're like, "Well, we just go next. I'm done with this." And then, this game sucks. I lost the security, XYZ excuse. Which, I mean, it could be true, but you can't. It sucks when you're on the receiving end of that, because you're not actively going there to just say, yeah, I just want to make people angry today, so I'm gonna go out of my way to do that. Most people don't do that. So it's disheartening, but I mean, it kind of just comes with the game. I mean, some people just really want to win, and I understand that. I really want to win too, but I don't go out of my way to make other people upset when I'm upset. That just doesn't make sense. Why would I want both of us to be upset? Now we're both not having a good time.
Yeah.
It's just like,
so I'll see what happens next week if they decide to come back. If not, and so. I'll kind of like gauge how I should be approaching them based on their further interactions. I like to pretend like I have really high analytical skills on being able to read and judge people. So I should be able to get an understanding just by observing them long enough to figure out how to handle them going forward. But yeah, it's just interesting. It was just a first. I don't have a whole lot of bad LGS stories worth telling, but this one was definitely a standout. But I believe that is going to be all the time that we have for this episode. So to wrap things up, I want to thank everyone for following. I want to thank everyone who on stream rated. I also want to thank everyone who stayed this long and listened, whether you're coming in now or just listening through the whole episode through. So thank you all, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, and it would mean the absolute world for me if you would help support the podcast and the channels by leaving a share on social medias and the respective likes, subscribes, and follows, depending on your platform on how you're listening to it. And also for like podcasting purposes, if you could leave a rating and review, that also helps with the overall exposure. And I want to thank everyone again, and I will see you all next time.